My childhood friend had my fiancé's baby. 16 years later, a DNA test shattered my life with a secret none of us saw coming. This all started 16 years ago when I was in my last year of high school. We were a tight-knit trio: Emma, Jake, and me. Emma and I were 18, and Jake was 19. He had repeated a grade after moving back from Spain with his family. So we all ended up in the same year. More than just friends, we were like family. Our parents were business partners. My dad and Emma's dad started a company together after college. Jake's father had moved abroad for work, but they returned when he was 8. Emma and I had been inseparable since we were toddlers, and Jake became part of our world when we were 7. The three of us vowed to be lifelong friends, just like our parents. Jake and I started dating when I was 16. It wasn't just a school romance. We were together for 2 years, and I truly believed we had a future. I was serious about him, but now I realize he only pretended to be. We had planned to attend the same university and eventually marry. People used to call Emma the third wheel, but in reality, she and I were so close that Jake often joked that he was the real outsider. Looking back now, I wonder if I was just the extra piece. But I'll get to that. When we were 18, Emma got pregnant. She was so terrified she locked herself in a bathroom stall at school. My heart dropped when I saw those 2 pink lines. I asked her who the father was, but she refused to say. She just sobbed uncontrollably, terrified of what her parents would think. To be sure, she took another test in front of me. I tried to calm her down, suggesting we see a doctor before she told her parents. When the doctor confirmed her pregnancy, she panicked. She hid it for nearly a month, afraid of her parents' reaction. That month was agonizing. I did everything I could for her. I brought her vitamins, made sure she ate, gave her my shoulder to cry on, and stayed up with her when she was too anxious to sleep. Despite all that, she still wouldn't tell me who the father was. I finally convinced her to tell her parents before it became too obvious. She begged me to be there for support, and I agreed. Our parents were used to seeing us always helping each other, so they didn't think anything was strange at first. But when she revealed her pregnancy, everything changed. Her parents called mine in distress, trying to figure out what to do. Even then, she refused to reveal the father's identity, not even to them. She cried so much that my parents urged hers to give her time to open up. 2 days later, my mother told me to stop spending so much time at Emma's house and to focus on my studies instead. I didn't think much of it at first. It wasn't that she thought Emma was a bad influence, if anything. My mom had always been protective of her. But a week later, I found out the real reason. That afternoon, I unexpectedly dropped by Emma's house and saw Jake sitting there with his parents. Emma was crying, Jake was crying, and my parents were there too. The moment my mother spotted me, she rushed over and told me to go home. Confused, I asked what was going on, but she just said, "This isn't your concern." Then Emma and Jake noticed me. Their faces went pale. I put it all together in an instant. My voice shook as I said, "Oh, the baby is Jake's. You've been sneaking around behind my back." They both ran toward me, begging, "Let us explain." But there was nothing to explain. The truth was right in front of me. My fiancé, my best friend, had betrayed me. My best friend was carrying his child. I screamed at them, furious and heartbroken. My parents had to pull me away because I was yelling so loudly. When I got home, I locked myself in my room and collapsed into bed, sobbing for days. The pain was unbearable. The people I loved the most had destroyed my world. I had blindly trusted Emma and supported her through everything, only to find out she was sneaking around with my fiancé behind my back. The worst part? Everyone was so busy tending to the expectant mother that no one even acknowledged my pain. Of course, Emma and Jake tried to reach out, but I refused to hear them out. I blocked them on every platform. It wasn't surprising that Emma and Jake's parents didn't care about my feelings. But what hurt the most was my own family's reaction. My mom just said, "Come on, don't be dramatic. You'll be like a cool aunt to the baby." As if that was supposed to make me feel better. She was acting completely out of touch with reality. My best friend was having my fiancé's baby, and she expected me to be happy about it. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," she told me. "We're all looking forward to welcoming this baby. Don't ruin the joy for everyone." It was infuriating. As if Jake cheating on me was just some minor mistake that I needed to get over. "These things happen when you're young," she added, shrugging. You'll find someone else, someone even better looking than Jake. She even winked when she said that, as if my heartbreak was some trivial teenage drama. I couldn't figure out when it had happened or how I'd been so blind to it. I had no one to turn to. Even my younger sister, who was 16 at the time, took their side. She was dating Emma's brother, so of course, she was loyal to them. When I vented to her, she scoffed and said, honestly, how did you not see this coming? You three were always together. If one of you got pregnant, obviously it was Jake's. She, too, told me to just move on and stop making a big deal out of it. School became unbearable. Both Jake and Emma dropped out. Jake couldn't handle the humiliation. And Emma left for obvious reasons. I was left behind, the only one forced to endure the endless gossip and whispers in the hallways. Everyone knew Jake and I'd been together. Now, they knew he had gotten my best friend pregnant. And I was stuck in the middle of the wreckage they left behind. My family wasn't any better. They seemed more worried about keeping their friendship with Emma and Jake's parents than about how I was feeling. My dad, at least, would occasionally check in on me, but my mom was the worst. She baked cookies for Emma while I locked myself in my room, drowning in heartbreak. It was like my pain didn't even exist to them. As Emma's pregnancy progressed, so did my misery. I couldn't escape it. I saw Jake taking her to doctor's appointments, going on walks with her, supporting her through everything the same way I had once supported her. My family told me to just ignore it and move on. But how could I? They were my neighbors. I ran into one of them every single day. Worse, my family constantly talked about the baby like it was the greatest thing to ever happen. Apparently, they even called themselves the future grandparents. That's how close our families were. If Emma had been having a child with anyone else, I might have felt happy for her. But not like this. Not anymore. My mental health plummeted. I hit rock bottom. I couldn't bear to stay there any longer. So, on the morning of my final high school exams, I packed a bag and left. I had been planning this since the moment I found out about the baby. I had been saving up, selling my books, my comics, my gadgets, my watches, anything valuable I owned. My family had been so exhausted from dealing with my mood that they didn't even question it when I told them. I was going on a short trip with friends. Sure, have fun, they said. But I never came back. I moved to the next city, found a cheap hostel, and started working as a waitress just to get by. It was scary, uncertain, and exhausting, but I finally felt free. After about a month, my parents started reaching out, asking when I was coming home. By then, I had changed my number, so they resorted to emailing me. I blocked them. When they used other emails, I changed mine. That was it. I don't know how hard they searched for me, but living alone wasn't easy. Eventually, though, I found my footing. I worked as a waitress for 2 years, then as a receptionist for another year. After that, I landed a job in sales, where I stayed for 3 years. That job changed my life. It's where I met my husband. He worked in marketing, and we connected over our shared struggles with family. He had lost his mother at a young age, and his father later married a girl his age, demanding he call her mom. The emotional manipulation and constant belittling pushed him to leave home. We had only known each other for a year when he made an offer that shocked me. He wanted to fund my university education, which I could repay later. He believed in me and wanted me to have a better future. After some hesitation, I accepted. I enrolled in college while continuing to work part-time to cover my other expenses. I studied accounting and, right after graduation, landed a well-paying job. On my first day at that job, he proposed. A year later, we were married, and now we have a child. Life has been good. A month ago, we took a family trip to Disneyland, where we planned to meet my sister, who was there with her husband and kids. She had married Emma's brother, and they had a child together. When I saw my sister's little one, I hugged them, and the moment felt surreal. Then I hugged my sister, and we both broke down crying. She felt awful about how things had turned out and apologized for not supporting me back then. Her husband, Emma's brother, also expressed regret. I told them it was best to leave the past behind and just enjoy the trip. We spent the trip reconnecting, laughing, and reminiscing. By the end, we exchanged contact information, and she made me promise to stay in touch. Later, when I got home, she told my mom about our reunion. My mom sent me a message asking for my number. I wasn't sure how I felt about reconnecting with her, but my husband encouraged me to make peace and move forward. After thinking it over, I told my sister she could share my number. Within an hour, my mom called me. She was sobbing. She told me how much she regretted everything, how sorry she was for all I had gone through. She desperately wanted to meet her grandson and begged me to visit with my family. I didn't say yes or no, I needed time to think. One day, as my sister was showing me pictures of her kids, I suddenly spotted a family photo that made my heart skip a beat. Emma and Jake were in it. My sister explained that they had gotten married for years after I left and had two more children in addition to their first daughter. I just smiled and didn't say a word. She seemed like she wanted to tell me more, but when she noticed my lack of interest, she let it go. After a lot of contemplation, I finally decided to visit my family. When I arrived, my parents hugged me tightly and cried. They apologized for neglecting my feelings all those years ago. It was a bittersweet moment. My sister and her husband were there, too, and he once again expressed his regret for not standing by me back then. Despite everything, it felt good to see them. We had all grown up like one big family, and now, after all this time, we were coming back together. My younger brother, who had been just 12 when I left, was now married and had a 2-month-old baby. Holding my nieces and nephews, seeing how much everyone had grown, and realizing how much time had passed, it was overwhelming but also healing in its own way. We stayed for 2 days. The first day was full of tears and emotional conversations, but it was also beautiful. My parents finally met my husband and our son, who was thrilled to meet his grandparents. The second day, I was casually chatting with my sister when my mom walked in and said, "See, I told you that you'd find someone better than Jake. And look, you have such a wonderful husband now. You worried unnecessarily about the whole situation." My sister shot her a look and told her to stop. But of course, she didn't, she continued. "Oh, it's fine. She's moved on from the past. Look how happy she's in her life now." I nodded and said, "Sure, I have." She sat next to me and said, "So why not truly make peace with the past? Forgive everyone and move on?" I replied, "I've already made peace with the past and forgiven everyone." She shook her head. "No, I don't mean them, I mean Jake and Emma. You should forgive them too and start talking again, so we can all spend time together like before." I stared at her. "Why do you want me to do that? You still spend time with them, don't you?" She sighed. "Well, yes, but they feel embarrassed that you don't acknowledge their kids. Emma and Jake's children are so sweet to us." I scoffed. "Your other two kids, my brother and sister, are sweet to your friends too. Be happy with that. Why should I care?" She wouldn't drop it. "You should forgive them and rekindle your friendship." I shook my head. "No way. And honestly, it's none of your business." She launched into a speech about forgiveness, quoting Jesus, and then casually added, "Emma wants to meet you and your husband. Can I invite her over for dinner?" I stood up. "If you do that, I'll leave right now and never come back." At that point, my siblings got upset with Mom too. She tried to defend herself, saying that Emma's dad had seen me through the window and might have told Emma. So Emma called her and asked to reconcile. That ridiculous excuse made me so angry that I stormed off to my room. My sister followed me and sighed. "Mom has this weird obsession with Emma's family. I mean, sure, they've been friends for decades, but the way she's so desperate to keep this friendship alive, it's kind of suspicious." I frowned. "What makes you say that?" She hesitated. "Well, last year, my husband and I were going through a rough patch. I casually mentioned to Mom that if things didn't improve, I might consider a divorce." She completely lost it. She said, outright, that divorce was not an option no matter what. Even if he cheated, I had to adjust because we couldn't ruin her friendship. That struck me as odd. My sister and I looked back at the past and realized Mom had always been like this. She had always favored Emma and her brother over us. We had never really questioned it before because, back then, Emma was my best friend and her brother was my sister's boyfriend. After we finished talking, I pushed the conversation to the back of my mind and we went home. But last week, my husband showed me a video that made my stomach drop. It was recorded at a bar in a neighbouring town, not our hometown, where he had gone for a work trip. In the video, a middle-aged couple was kissing. The couple was none other than my mom and Emma's dad. I was stunned. Suddenly, Mom's obsession with keeping the peace and maintaining her friendship with Emma's family made perfect sense. They didn't just want to spend time together as friends, they had been seeing each other behind our backs. My husband hadn't realized at first who the man was. He just knew it was my mom, and he recorded it because he figured I wouldn't believe him otherwise. But after watching it, everything clicked. I was speechless. I needed to talk to someone. So I called my sister and asked her to come over the next day. She sensed the urgency and came quickly. When I showed her the video, she was just as shocked as I was. My sister hasn't told her husband yet because she knows he would absolutely lose it. Now we're stuck in a dilemma. Should we tell Dad about this? Or should we confront Mom and ask her to stop? But wouldn't that just be betraying Dad all over again? Things are getting complicated. Update 2. My parents are getting divorced. Yes, for obvious reasons. My sister and I spent weeks trying to figure out what to do. At least I could discuss it with my husband and vent. But my sister had it worse. She couldn't even talk to her husband about it. The anxiety and secrecy were ruining her relationship. We had to do something. So we did what any siblings in the world would do. We told our brother, thinking he might have a better idea of how to handle it. The moment he saw the video, he completely lost it. Without hesitation, he stormed straight to Mom and confronted her. Right in front of Dad, she denied everything until he showed her the video to her face. I don't know if it was wise or reckless of us to involve him, but at least the weight wasn't just on our shoulders anymore. Our brother told us he had been angry with Mom his whole life because she ignored him in favor of Emma and her brother. He even admitted that, for years, he had resented my sister and me for being so close to them. But as he grew older, he understood why we were, because Mom pushed us in that direction. What he never understood was why Mom had always been so attached to that family. Dad and my brother almost stormed over to Emma's house to show the video to her mom. When they did, she broke down upon seeing her husband kissing mine. To put it simply, Mom had been sleeping with Dad's business partner. By then, everyone knew the truth, including Jake and his parents. Dad and Emma's mom decided to team up and confront them together. We wanted to stay out of it, but how could we? After learning that this had been going on since we were kids. At first, Mom and Emma's dad claimed it was a recent midlife crisis affair, but their stories didn't match. And when Dad threatened to throw her out of the house immediately, they finally admitted the truth. They had been cheating for over 30 years. They had been doing it in front of everyone, long before Jake's dad moved to Spain. And no one had ever suspected a thing. Dad tried to stay strong for the family, but he was miserable. One day, he just showed up at my door, hugged me, and broke down crying. He said he finally understood the pain I must have felt when my fiancé cheated on me with my best friend, because Mom had done the exact same thing to him. She had betrayed him with his best friend. It was like being stabbed from both sides. Dad called the three of us, my sister, brother, and me, for a meeting. He told us he was sorry, but he couldn't forgive Mom or continue living with her, pretending nothing had happened. Mom was telling him the same thing she told me, of forgive and move on. But Dad wasn't having it. He said he was proceeding with the divorce and wanted to tell us himself. We all supported him. No hesitation. Whatever he decided, we stood by him. When Mom found out Dad was officially serving her divorce papers, she fainted. She begged him for another chance for the sake of the family. I wasn't there at the time, but my sister was. She told me it turned into a full-blown family drama. But Dad didn't back down. He handed her the papers and moved out. A similar thing happened in Emma's family. Her mom also filed for divorce and moved out. So now, in our home, Mom is alone. And in their home, Emma's dad is alone. Will they move in together? Who knows? Maybe this was what they had been waiting for all along. Either way, I'm out of it. I have my own family to focus on now. And these divorces have taken a serious toll on my sister. Both sides of her family are affected, and she and her husband are struggling to navigate through it all. I just hope their relationship can withstand this storm, and that they find a way to move forward together. Thanks for all the support. I'll update again if anything new comes up. Update 3. Well, if I thought my story couldn't get any more insane, I was wrong. At this point, it's not just being fueled with drama, it's straight up gasoline on a bonfire. My dad started having doubts about whether we were actually his biological children. He didn't want to tell us anything at first, because he didn't want to add even more chaos to an already devastating situation. But my brother, who had his own suspicions, brought it up first. That's when Dad admitted he had been questioning it too. So we all took a DNA test. The results shattered everything we knew about our family. I am my dad's biological child. So is my brother. But my sister isn't. She's actually the daughter of Emma's father. Yes, my mom had a child with her so-called best friend's husband, which means my sister unknowingly married her half-brother. It's a miracle my nephew was born healthy, because he could have been at risk for congenital defects. Thankfully, he wasn't, but my sister is planning to have him undergo a checkup soon, just in case. On top of the emotional fallout, there's also a legal issue. In this state, and possibly the entire country, half-siblings cannot legally be married due to shared bloodlines and genetic risks. My sister now finds herself in an unimaginable predicament. Even though she and her husband had no idea, the law is the law. Their marriage was annulled. This has been absolutely crushing for them. They truly loved each other and never saw this coming. There are no words to describe the devastation they're feeling. And all of this, the pain, the heartbreak. The legal mess is entirely my mom and her lover's fault. Yet, they won't face any consequences for it. They won't go to jail. They won't be held accountable. They just ruined lives and moved on. Honestly, I don't know what else could possibly happen at this point. And I really hope there are no more surprises. But with the way things have been going, who knows?